So, we are in Matthew chapter 10. We have been looking mm, mhm, looking at the sending out of the 12. So now he says, "Behold, I send you out," in verse 16, "as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves." I've always liked that verse. Wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. You know, that's a real striking of a balance. Wise as serpents, harmless as a dove. You think of the dove and peace, that gentle cooing. And when you think of the serpent, you think of crafty, and you think of, well, really, you think of a venomous bite. Even wicked, actually. Snakes, aren't they normally portrayed as a wicked thing? So we're not supposed to be like these wicked serpents, but we're supposed to be as wise as them. Wise, crafty, smart. Maybe have a bit of a sting, and yet gentle as a dove. Peaceful, cooing, comforting. It's striking the balance between these two things that Christians are called to do. I think of a parallel passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh, and he dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the fullness of the Father, the fullness of grace and truth. Here we have a similar pairing: grace and truth. Gentle as doves, wise as serpents. Truly, if there is a spectrum with the gentleness of a dove on this side and the wise wisdom of a serpent on this side, and the middle is a balance. We have a scale. And at that fulcrum point, it's the balance of the two, being both wise and gentle, speaking forth both grace and truth. And most people are strong in the one and they're weaker in the other. Even moment to moment, that can happen. And so it's something that you and I should be praying about and seeking to do, that we would be focusing on, am I balancing grace with truth? Am I balancing this crafty wisdom of the serpent with the gentleness and harmlessness? The word there can mean innocence of a dove. Again, as harmless as doves, gentle, innocent as a dove. There's this balance. And so, how do we find that balance? Wise like a serpent, innocent like a dove, gentle, full of the truth. And the truth, the word of God, well, it's sharper than any two-edged sword, and it can be divisive, right? Between soul and spirit, between bone and marrow. The word of God can really have a kind of a powerful and pointed, and, well, it can even be kind of, it stabs you right in the heart. And yet the grace of God, the message of his mercy. I didn't intend to spend all morning on one verse. There's some really cool stuff coming up. But the point is that we should be regularly examining ourselves to determine where am I falling on this scale, and whether it's a singular event, because again, each situation we might handle it a little too heavy on one side of that scale, but even our general demeanor. Are we generally a little more passive, very gentle, very loving, very kind, but we struggle to speak the truth to people? We struggle to be forward and use that crafty, godly wisdom. The idea being is like, boom, this is the straight up what it is. We struggle with that, but we love people, encourage people, and can be very gentle. But on the other side, some people just like to beat people with the bat of truth. Here's the Bible. It is true. Therefore, I can wield it however I want. I mean, it's the sword of the Lord, right? But some people are crazy wielding the sword because it's like, well, this is God's sword, so I can just do whatever I want with it. And they just kind of fling it around and realize there is no gentleness there and there's no grace in that message. All they want to do is beat people up with the word of God. And, it's true, right? I mean, you could say a lot of true things that probably aren't very helpful and are extremely hurtful. Hey, you look like you've gained weight. It's true. Therefore, there should be no problem me saying that to you, right? That's the point. I mean, truth doesn't always need to be said. It doesn't. That doesn't mean we're avoiding God's truth and we're like brushing it under the rug. But the point is that there's a lot of true things that don't necessarily have to come out if you have actual wisdom. And so we balance these two things out, grace and truth, this harmlessness and gentleness paired with this wisdom and craftiness. And there was a third example I had, and it's evaded my mind now. But that's the idea, is we need to pair these two things with the 1-2 punch, leaning not too heavily this way and leaning not too heavily that way, but making sure we have that balance. And the only way we'll be able to do any kind of effective change in this area is if you take the time to pray, whether it's about a specific situation you've been handling or are about to handle, or just in general, but then asking God, where am I weak in this area? What is it I need to be encouraged to do? Okay, God, am I a jerk wielding the word of God and like crazy and I'm pushing people away and I'm turning people off to Jesus because although what I say is true, I'm just kind of not using it wisely? Or, Lord, am I permissive? Do I just let people go on sinning and I don't say anything because I'm so gentle? I would hate to offend them, to let them know that they're sinning against a holy God and they need to stop. But I would hate to hurt anyone's feelings. And again, there's a balance. And we all ought to be continually examining ourselves and then allowing God to change us. Are you okay with being changed? Or are you just happy the way you are? I mean, that's part of this being conformed into the image of Jesus Christ. That through being heated up in fiery trials and molded, being whacked with the forger's hammer. I mean, these are the things that conform us into the image of Jesus. And sometimes we can just do it on our own, rather than having God have to force us into shape by hammering and heating and all of that. Well, we can just choose to bend to his will, to recognize the rough spots and choose to try and smooth them out on our own rather than having God have to do the work as we're unwilling to participate. And so I thought of my third example, and it's Jesus, right? The same Jesus whom the children came to and nestled under his arms, right? And the same Jesus who wept over Jerusalem is the same Jesus who braided the whip, flipped over the tables, and drove out the money changers. I mean, it's the same Jesus because he is the fullness of grace and truth. We see both sides fully in him, and how we can actually be on very extreme ends of this spectrum of just really piercing, heavy truth and just amazing outpouring love and grace, but at the appropriate times, to the appropriate people, in the appropriate amounts. So, Jesus is sending us out as sheep among wolves. I didn't spend any time on that, but guys, look around. The world is the commentary on that verse. You are the prey, they are the predators. But if you're going to be effective in the world in which we live, you need to wisely ask God. Well, ask God for the wisdom you need. It's wise to do that, so that you have a balance of grace and truth, of meekness and of power, of gentleness and of wisdom. So seek God and ask Him for help to balance those things out. That said, I will see you guys tomorrow morning, bright and early. Bye-bye.